Good evening. My name's Edward King Thompson, and welcome to another video. It is a frequently discussed statistic that only 5% of the world's oceans have been explored. Perhaps this is because it's comforting to believe that despite humanity's systematic destruction of the natural world, the Earth still holds a vestige of mystery. But what about on land? Surely by this point in the 21st century, with rampant deforestation and habitat destruction, there are no untouched pockets of wilderness still remaining. Or are there? The Amazon rainforest, which spreads across several South American countries, is surely one of the last remaining contenders. For centuries, since colonial invaders first contacted isolated tribes in Brazil and Peru, the locals relayed tales about a mysterious and frightening creature, the Mapinguary. Mapinguari is often translated to roaring animal or fetid beast, and many accounts from natives are surprisingly consistent. The creature is described as being cow or bear-sized, with reddish matted fur, long inverted claws, an extremely loud roar, and generating a putrid odour with the ability to daze anyone in the vicinity, even rendering them unconscious. At first glance, this description appears highly fantastical, unreal, and surely fabricated. What known taxonomy would explain such bizarre and alien descriptions? In the late 1700s, the first fossils were unearthed of a presumed extinct group of sloths. The four families are now referred to as giant ground sloths, and are very different from the small, tree-dwelling variety we know today. It is generally accepted that they went extinct around 8,000 years ago, with a Caribbean species surviving until around 450 AD. It is largely agreed upon that folkloric stories of extinct animals can persist for several centuries, but what about thousands of years? Additionally, there are first-hand eyewitness accounts of the creature from living tribe members. One, Giovaldo Caritiana, a 27-year-old Indian, claims to have seen one in the late 2000s. He was hunting in the jungle near an area that his tribe calls the Cave of the Mapinguary. In an interview on the tribe's reservation in the western Amazon, he said, "It was coming towards the village, making a big noise. It stopped when it got near me. That's when the bad smells made me dizzy and tired. I fainted, and when I came to, the Mapinguari was gone." Caritiana's father, Lucas, confirmed the account. He said that when his son took him back to the site of the encounter, he saw a cleared pathway where the creature had departed, as if a boulder had rolled through and knocked down all the trees and vines. The now well-known theory that the Mapinguari is an extant species of giant ground sloth was first suggested by ornithologist David Loren. In a 1993 paper for Goldina Zoologia, he attempted to demonstrate how each of the eyewitness descriptions of the Mapinguari were consistent with a mylodontid ground sloth. Nearly all known hair samples from the fossil record were reddish in colour. Ground sloths were known to walk with their claws turned inward, which would have been misinterpreted as backwards feet by eyewitnesses. Oren's study of sloth hyoid bones suggested to him that they would have been capable of loud vocalizations, again, consistent with reports of the cryptid. However, there are some glaring problems with Oren's hypothesis and the idea that any species of giant ground sloth is still extant at all. As I mentioned earlier, accelerated deforestation is so widespread across South America that it seems highly unlikely that a population of a species this large could remain undetected to the present day. Brazilian novelist Marcio Souza believes the beast is a myth for this very reason, stating, "There would have been some sort of close encounter of the third kind by now." Further skepticism is fueled by the lack of physical scientific evidence of an extant ground sloth species. Sloth expert Peter Toledo points out that when you travel in the Amazon, you're constantly hearing about this animal, especially when you're in contact with indigenous peoples, but the convincing scientific proof, in the form of vestiges of bones, blood, or excrement is always lacking. Perhaps then, this elusive, presumably small population of sloths exist in a completely isolated region of the Amazon rainforest. The reason I was inspired to make this video in the first place was an interview I watched with biologist and TV personality Forrest Galante, discussing the only location he believes the animals could still survive.
But after all the research I've compiled, there is, in my opinion, one location on Earth. It's in high Peru, where nobody goes. It's a bowl of mountains, impenetrable. The only way in is a helicopter in the center. To me, that that bowl is going to be like a primordial Eden. All of the cultures surrounding it have old stories of giant sloths. They all have different names for it, but they all have these stories of these giant sloths, right? They were all hunted to extinction. However, they've handed down these traditions. But nobody, except for, a tiny handful of far out tribal people, have ever really got into this impenetrable bowl. And I think if they're anywhere, they're in there.
Wow.
I'm highly skeptical of the idea that any species of giant ground sloth persists in the uninhabited regions of the Amazon. Based on the currently available evidence, I believe that the majority of Mapinguari sightings can be explained by a surviving oral tradition passed down through generations of locals. In a bizarre manner, the creatures survive in the collective ancestral memory of tribal natives. I do think there is a strong possibility that a few ground sloths remained extant until far more recently than is currently accepted by the scientific community. As technology allows us to compile more information and construct a clearer picture of our shared history, I feel that a collective sense of regret and guilt is becoming more prevalent. We can now understand how the destructive actions of our ancestors, practices which we continue today, have wiped out many of the mysterious and incredible species of megafauna which existed well into recent history. Let's hope that we utilise the benefit of hindsight to prevent this happening to untouched areas of our oceans, and to the ultimate unexplored frontier. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.